Dust danced like ghosts over the cracked boards of the crossroads' hollow auction platform. The sun, low and unforgiving, spilled light across the clearing in molten streaks, bathing the onlookers in gold as if to sanctify what should never have been blessed. A mare snorted nearby, tethered to a fence post, her coat gleaming with health and dignity. On the other side stood a woman, bowed but unbroken, arms wrapped around two swaddled infants that barely stirred beneath the threadbare shawl cloaking them from the wind. Clementine Dawes did not cry. Her eyes had gone too dry for that. Her voice, when it came, was not desperate but quiet, shaped more by shame than panic. "Please," she whispered to the man nearest her, his coat worn and dusted with trail grit. "Buy them. Not the horse. Them. My girls." He stared. Not at the babies, not yet, but at her face, searching it as if trying to place a forgotten hymn. Ezra Colt didn't speak. He tipped his hat back, revealing eyes pale as gunmetal, and glanced toward the auctioneer, who was already calling bids for Boaz McCready's prize roan. The crowd barely noticed the woman. Not until someone near the back hissed, "Ain't that the preacher's girl? The one who ran off?" That was all it took. "She came west with child," someone muttered. "No husband, no ring. They say she tricked McCready. Claimed she was her sister. She lied." And still Clementine held the twins close, her jaw set, her shoulders stiff with the weight of their silence. The babies made no sound. Perhaps they'd already learned there was little kindness to be found in noise. Boaz McCready stood at the center of it all, his suspenders strained over a belly fat with indulgence. His mustache twitched as he laughed low in his throat. "Ain't my fault she came heavy with another man's spawn. Said she'd be a wife, turned out she was a liar. Now I'm just selling what's mine. The horse or the lot of 'em, don't much care which sells first." A few men chuckled. The rest shifted uncomfortably. One woman turned away, her hand over her heart. Clementine didn't flinch. She couldn't afford to. She had been born for softness, songs on the porch at dusk, lace-hemmed dresses stitched by a mother's hand. But softness was a language this land had no use for. After her parents died in the cholera sweep, she and her sister, Willa, had nothing but a photo, a promise, and a ticket west. She was supposed to be the strong one, the responsible one. It was Willa's name on the contract. Willa, who had been promised to Boaz McCready, but Willa was still 16, all hair ribbons and orchard dreams. Clementine went in her place, sent her sister back to Missouri with a final letter and a sack of seed money. She'd bear the ugliness so her sister wouldn't have to. But when Boaz saw her round belly, he'd laugh. Called her a cheat. Said the deal was void. Left her stranded on a borrowed wagon bench outside town. The babies had come a week early, born beneath a frost-stained sky, their cries thin and uncertain. No names. No time. Just two tiny lives pressed against her chest as she tried to barter for scraps from passing travelers. Most turned away. One offered her a bottle of milk, then took it back when she wouldn't earn it. When Boaz put her on the docket at today's auction, listed between a crate of dry goods and a lame mule, she hadn't protested. Her voice was already ash in her throat. But she had waited for one man, one soul, to look at her girls and not see weight or shame or burden. And now Ezra Colt stood before her. He didn't ask questions, didn't offer sympathy, just studied the scene with the air of a man watching a slow-brewing storm. He'd come to town for nails and feed. The auction was a distraction. Or it should have been. Ezra had known hunger before, not the kind that gnawed at the belly, but the kind that twisted in the chest late at night, long after the fire burned low. He'd been engaged once, before the stampede that ruined his leg. The preacher's daughter back in Amarillo had left a note and never returned. Since then, he'd filled his silence with soil and sweat, building a ranch where no one could mock his limp or pity his solitude. He hadn't planned to stop. But then he heard Clementine's whisper. Now the auctioneer was calling again. $40 for the mare. Do I hear 45? Boaz smirked. Or a matched set of babies, 2 for the price of feed. Come on, boys, she's real quiet. Got herself a wet nurse built in, too. Ezra felt something low and hot rise in his chest. Not rage. Just the slow heat of something he hadn't felt in years. Conviction. The baby in Clementine's left arm twitched, a small hiccuping breath. He saw the way her mother instinctively rocked her, even as she stood trembling in public shame. No one taught that kind of grace. It was built into the bone. 60 for the mare, came a shout. 65. Boaz raised both hands like a showman. Or a woman and her brats. What'll it be? Ezra stepped forward. I'll take the woman, he said. The crowd hushed. And the girls. Boaz chuckled. Ain't got that kind of coin, Colt. Ezra reached into his coat, pulled out a folded deed. 30 acres of grassland. No liens. Worth more than that, nag. The auctioneer hesitated. Is this legal? Someone asked. Boaz shrugged. A trade's a trade. Ezra walked up to Clementine. The babies stirred as he came near. I don't need a wife, he said quietly. But I won't let you be sold like cattle. Clementine searched his face. He did not smile. She nodded once and stepped down from the platform. Together, they walked past the murmuring crowd. Behind them, the babies fussed softly, as if waking for the first time into a world where mercy still lived. The mare kicked her stall, restless. The town would talk, of course. They always did. But as the 3 of them disappeared down the dirt road, shadows stretching long and solemn behind them, no one noticed a 4th figure arriving on the edge of town. A young woman stepped off the coach, coat clutched to her chest, eyes scanning the horizon. Willa Dawes, she whispered to no one. She looked toward the auction block and began to run. The morning sun filtered through pine needles and dust, casting fractured light across Ezra Colt's homestead, where the horizon stretched in gold and blue. Smoke rose soft from the chimney. Inside, a cradle fashioned from split timber rocked gently on the floorboards, creaking with each slow sway of Clementine's foot. One twin stirred, tiny hands reaching, while the other lay curled beneath a wool scrap, quiet and content. Ezra, crouched by the stove, ladled broth into a tin bowl. He offered it without a word, just a glance, and returned to the fire. The silence between them had grown into something whole, something nearly sacred. Neither sought to fill it. Clementine took the bowl with both hands, fingers trembling not from fear anymore, but from the unfamiliar warmth of being seen and not judged. Her sleeves were rolled to her elbows, her palms raw from scrubbing the porch clean the day before. She had been working since dawn, not because he asked, but because there was peace in order. Outside, the old windmill turned slow, creaking like an old man sighing. The land here was untamed, too vast for fences, but Ezra had carved a home into it, not by force but by patience. And he offered it to her now, wordlessly, with small gestures, a dry blanket before dusk, a bundle of firewood left by the door, a cradle built when she woke from a nightmare with sweat clinging to her skin and fear in her eyes. She hadn't asked him why. She didn't dare. On the 3rd evening, as twilight turned the sky violet and the coyotes cried from the ridge, Clementine sat on the porch, rocking one daughter while the other lay asleep against her chest. Ezra came from the barn, a satchel slung over his shoulder, and laid a small bundle at her feet, 2 cotton dresses, stitched by hand, buttons mismatched but lovingly sewn. "They'll grow fast," he said simply, voice gravelly from disuse. Her throat tightened. "Thank you." Ezra looked at her then, really looked, and said nothing. But the quiet between them shifted. By the end of the week, she'd learned his gait, how his limp slowed more in cold, how he paused before each step as though testing the ground beneath him. He'd noticed, too, how her voice only returned when singing to the girls, soft lullabies carried from her childhood like fading threads. Her presence was no longer a shadow in the corner but a quiet flame, steadying the rhythm of the house. But Crossroads Hollow was not a place that forgot. Word spread like wildfire and burned just as hot. The sheriff arrived by midday, boots trailing dust, jaw clenched tight as his reins. Ezra met him halfway down the pasture. The girls were asleep, Clementine watching through the window. Beau Macready's filed complaint, the sheriff grunted, removing his hat. Claims those babies are his. That you've got stolen property. Ezra's eyes narrowed. They ain't property. They're children. And they're hers. The sheriff scratched his jaw, shifting uneasily. Court might not see it that way. Then the court can come here, Ezra said, voice steady as bedrock. But they won't find a liar. They'll find a man raising what others threw away. A long silence stretched between them, but the sheriff finally nodded. Just watch your back, Ezra. Macready don't lose easy. He left in a swirl of dust, and Ezra watched him go, jaw set. That evening, Clementine stood at the stove, hands kneading dough. She didn't ask what was said, but when Ezra set his rifle near the door before nightfall, she didn't question it either. The next morning brought a visitor that neither of them expected. A coach rolled into the clearing, its wheels groaning like something reluctant to wait. From it stepped a young woman, her boots too fine for this dirt, her eyes scanning the ranch with panic rising behind her practiced posture. Clementine stepped out, and for the first time in weeks, her breath caught in her chest. "Willa," she whispered. The girl turned, and her face cracked. "Clem." They rushed to one another, the girl still in Clementine's arms, and fell into a tangle of tears and laughter and apology. Ezra stood a distance off, his hand resting on the porch post, watching as if from another life. "I got your letter too late," Willa gasped. "The one with the money. I came anyway. When I heard what Macready had done, what he tried." Clementine shook her head, but Willa wouldn't stop. "I was supposed to marry him. But you went instead." Her eyes filled with guilt. "You always protected me." Ezra turned away, retreating into the barn, leaving the sisters to grieve and mend in equal measure. That night, they all sat by firelight, the twins curled against their mother, Willa running her fingers through one baby's soft curls, humming a song neither sister had sung since their mother died. It might have been peace, until hoofbeats shattered it. They came like thunder, 3 riders through the darkness, lanterns swaying at their sides. Ezra was already at the door, rifle in hand. Clementine rose, handing the girls to Willa with shaking arms. Boaz Macready dismounted slow, boots heavy with confidence. His grin was wide. The 2 men beside him flanked him like dogs. "Evenin', Colt," Boaz drawled. "Come for what's mine." "You gave it up," Ezra replied. Boaz shrugged. "I got the sheriff's paper. Girls mine. Mother's a fraud. Said she was someone else's bride." Ezra didn't move. Inside, the girls began to cry. Clementine stepped forward, but Ezra stopped her with a glance. "Paper or not," he said, "you'll take nothing from here." Boaz laughed. "You think you can stop me? You and your limp." Ezra didn't answer. But from the dark behind the barn, the sheriff appeared, rifle cocked and pointed. "Macready," the sheriff barked, "you lied on a legal contract. The judge wired this morning. Girls are hers by blood. Ezra's their guardian now. You push this, you go to jail." Boaz's smile collapsed like rotten timber. He spat at the ground, muttered a curse, and turned his horse. "You'll regret this, Colt." "Not likely," Ezra said softly. The men disappeared into night. Inside, the fire crackled and the girls quieted. Willa stared at Ezra, voice shaking. "Why would you risk everything for us?" Ezra met her gaze, then looked at Clementine. "They're not a burden," he said. "They're a beginning." Clementine's hand brushed his. He didn't flinch. Outside, the night settled again, but the wind had changed. From the hill, a shape watched them, a figure in a long coat, face hidden beneath a traveling hat. It waited, then turned, and began walking toward the light.